making a sourdough pie crust, which I'm actually going to be using to make a galette, which is I call it lazy man's pie. So I'm going to be making a galette dough. First thing I'm doing is cutting the butter into the flour. Almost done. I'm cutting a whole half pound of butter in. If you've ever made pie dough, you know that it's mostly butter, which is a good thing. Essentially just coating the chunks of butter with the flour. It's going to be nice and flaky and buttery. I'm kind of smushing them a little bit as I'm mixing them in. I'll probably do this with my hands too, but I'm going to try to keep them a little bit clean. And what the heck? These are the best kitchen tools money can buy. And they can't even buy it. Okay, now I'm going to slowly incorporate the sourdough starter, this was sitting in my fridge yesterday and I reactivated it last night, so it's nice and bubbly. And I'm going to use about a cup. Smells nice and yeasty and funky. I've had this for about 6 months now. And I'm just going to mix it in, and then just to get the right consistency. So it's going to be about a cup total. Start off with that. Got absorbed right in there, didn't it? This is, of course, a great use for a discarded starter if you have that on hand. I don't happen to have any now. So what I did was I just fed my regular starter, and I've been keeping it really low, so really only keeping about maybe 100 grams of starter and then restarting it. That way I don't have discard, but either way, get you to the same results. All right, so I'm going to keep on mixing this until we're ready to form it into basically a dough. Still looks a little dry, although I've never made one of these before, so I can't really tell, but looks a little bit floury, although it is kind of thickening up the more I do it. But I think I might add just a smidge more, but it's definitely getting sticky. I'll add a little bit more. Not too much, but maybe another couple tablespoons. And got my club hand here. Definitely gets sticky. I don't have a pastry blender, which is one of those little handle looking things with kind of the rounded, just Google pastry blender, you know what I mean. I've always seen those, but never knew that that's what they were called. But if I had one, I'd certainly be using it at this moment, but I do not. Right, so let's just get this formed into a dough. Finished up here so I don't see any dry spots. Yeah, there's some dry stuff down at the bottom. Right, now it's starting to look like a dough ball. It already smells pretty pleasant, as you might imagine, butter and flour. mixed together might. All right, so I'm going to kind of make it into a ball, and then we're going to let it essentially ferment on the counter for about 6 to 8 hours. All right, now for a 6 to 8 hour ferment. So I had previously made the dough recipe, which if you're making galettes, actually makes 2. So I've retrieved this second half from the refrigerator, and now I'm just gonna let it warm up a little bit, but I'm gonna roll it out. First, I'm gonna flour my work surface. You can see I've got a handy tape measure here. I kind of want this to be something like a about 14-inch circle. I'll also flour my rolling pin a bit, and just start to work it till we get to a circular dough. Now it's still pretty cold, so I just pulled it out of the fridge. So this is a spelt sourdough pie crust or galette crust. So now, next step is to get the rolled out dough onto the parchment. So, if I was more practiced at this, I'd be able to just roll this sucker on, use the rolling pin, and get it going. But we'll see how I do here. Oh boy. Come on, bud. Almost there. You're still looking at it shrunk, significantly shrunk. And you can kind of, sheet a little bit here and reform the edges if you need to. The great thing about galettes is it doesn't need to be perfectly precise. Rustic, as I like to call it, another word for sloppy, will work just fine. So this is going to be a mixed berry tart. So I'm going to use strawberries and blueberries. So we're almost at 4 cups here, but you know what? I want to include one more berry. So I have this lovely plant, which I'm about to show you, growing in my yard. This is a Himalayan blackberry, which is If you don't know, it's the mean kind that's got the thorns. This was a farrow plant that came from next door, and I just, I'm a softie. I wanted to see her grow, and of course now she's making beautiful berries, so we'll pick some. Now it's time to fill our galette. Now I like to keep it pretty simple when it comes to the filling. I don't like to add a lot of extra sugar, more than what's in the fruit, but I will lay down a little bed of brown sugar sometimes, like right now, just kind of in the center. And if I have them around, I'll usually put in some chopped mixed nuts. Like I love putting hazelnuts, roasted salted hazelnuts in the bottom layer here. I don't have any on hand right now, so we'll just keep this galette simple. You know, the idea is not to make it overly sweet, just something that's relatively healthy. And I personally love to put lemon zest on just about everything. So savory, sweet, sauces, it doesn't matter. Put a little lemon zest on it. I'm just going to start to add the fruit. You want to leave, I don't know, about an inch or so of space so that we can fold the dough back over onto itself, thus making the crust of the poor man's pie. That's what I like to call galettes. Looks like we really only used about 2 cups per one galette, but if you're making 2 of them, then you would absolutely use the 4 cups. And I'm just going to sort of manually, carefully place the delicate blackberries that we just picked. All right, so now I'm just going to carefully fold over the crust part. And kind of pinch it as you go. Once in a while it'll sort of leak out. It's not a bad thing, it's just makes it more rustic. I'm going to try to avoid that from happening just by, again, sort of carefully folding your dough over here. I'll get a few more berries in here. The great thing about galettes is they're really forgiving. All right, don't see anything too major to be concerned about, but we'll know when it bakes. All right. So the next thing I like to do is make an egg wash on the crust, and that'll contribute to it browning, and it may also contribute to its structural integrity here. So the proteins in the egg can contribute to strengthening of the dough. So this is just 1 pastured egg beaten sure to get into every nook and cranny. All right. And finally, what I like to do is using turbinado sugar, which is a little thicker than just plain old table sugar, just kind of for a little bit around the edges to give me another little bit of sweetness. Nothing too crazy. And a little over the top for good measure. All right, we are ready to bake. This is going into a 400-degree oven. I'm going to set the timer for 40 minutes, although it probably is going to take closer between 45 and 50 minutes. Here we are, hot and fresh out the oven. So I'm going to take this stuff that leaked out and just kind of scoop it back into the tart while it's still piping hot.